AskReddit by Vixel. Ex-Trump supporters, what made you change your mind? My sisters-in-laws are the most conservative people I've ever met in my life. They fled Venezuela and landed straight into Texas. They own guns, anti-abortion, the whole 9 yards. And yet, they could not bring themselves to support Trump. They have PTSD from living under Hugo Chavez, and that's the vibe Trump gives off according to them. This is really similar to a co-worker from El Salvador. She's a cook and wants nothing more than to be a cop, is vocal about being Republican. She fucking loathes Trump, wishes Romney would run. I started to get fed up and embarrassed by other supporters. That made me start to question things more. One of my neighbors is a lifelong conservative, but he got to the point where he couldn't stand being associated with those FG losers. That caused him to take a harder look at Trump's policies and actions, along with the rest of the Republican Party. Most recently, he has started talking about voting blue in the next election. One domino after another, it seems. My mother heard that Trump instigated a riot and people were calling for the death of the vice president. She heard this for the first time last week. I was a member of the Republican Party since 1978. I changed to Democrat the day they put the big orange baby on the ticket 8 years ago. I took it as a joke. Didn't give any credence that he would be the legit choice of the Republicans, especially after the grab her by the pussy soundbite. I can't believe people heard that and still moved forward with electing him. Women that support him are beyond my understanding. Not me personally, but my mom stopped supporting Trump after his colossal mishandling of the COVID situation and even broke her out of her anti-vax mindset that she had for the last decade. Thanks Trump. At the time, I was in high school surrounded by people who watched exclusively Fox News. Suffice it to say, I thought myself a very educated young Republican. The grab him by the pussy quote was what got me, at least when I realized he wasn't kidding. It horrified me to hear all the excuses good people I loved made for that line. As I continued to watch the Republican debates, it became clear that he had no idea what he would actually do if he got the presidency. He wanted some things but was incapable of verbalizing how, and so many people in my life fell for it. I went from laughing about the distant possibility of Trump winning to gritting my teeth as it started to become a reality. That's genuinely my biggest point of confusion. How can people I grew up with, who have daughters of their own, think someone who will say something like that is fit to be a leader? What example does that set? Cut the NPS budget. The landmass we inhabit is the only thing I'm actually proud of, so reducing the budget to protect our most amazing places was the final straw. Then COVID, then the 6th of January. I never supported him, but it wasn't until I saw this quote that I realized what a pose he was. Environmental protection. What they do is a disgrace. Every week they come out with new regulations, he told Fox News Sunday last year. Who's going to protect the environment? Asked host Chris Wallace. We'll be fine with the environment, Trump replied. We can leave a little bit, but you can't destroy businesses. Was more right-leaning until the past couple of years when I got sick of feeling aligned with all of the conspiracy theorists and hate mongers. I just want people to be happy and have the best shot at a decent life, and that's not what the right promotes. That's how I started off my adult life on the right. I just felt their ideals aligned with my own. I never really looked that deep into if their actions actually lined up with their ideals. I heard a young Latino voter on the radio talking about how he was voting Republican because he liked their values, and I'm just thinking, oh you sweet summer child. Was on a job, chatting with the customer who retired from a FBI supervising office dealing with white-collar crime. At that time he just finished reading Trump's indictment. I nervously asked how it was, mostly because I don't talk politics with customers. In short, his words were, I was rooting for him, I want to like him. But this is really damning. I knew this customer pretty well, he's smart, has been over some big cases, As an expert, if he's saying these crimes are something bad, it's worse than what I think it is. It's publicly available and Jack Smith's team writes pretty plainly. You can read for yourself why 12 ordinary Americans indicted him in 4 separate cases. The 6th of January. Most embarrassing shit I've ever seen in my life. I could see the mental gymnastics working overdrive defending his moronic behavior throughout his presidency, but it's mind-numbing to think people saw an actual insurrection orchestrated by him and still think he represents even a slice of what this country needs. I got divorced and realized that my ex-wife was a legitimate narcissist. As I learned about cluster B personality disorders and narcissism, I realized that all of the tactics they use is exactly what Trump does. That's a pretty strong argument. Ironically, my ex is also very narcissistic, and he hates Trump. To be fair, my friend and I were both married to narcs at the same time. We would compare stories every morning on our ride to work. We would share what the other was going through with our husbands. For about 2 weeks we replaced the other husband's name in a story about our own husband, and told our own husband that story. So essentially a story about what they did, giving the other one's name. Neither of these two men recognized themselves in these stories. Narcs really are that self-centered. It is so fucking refreshing to read a whole bunch of people who sympathize with traditionally conservative ideas but who have also retained and are using their critical thinking skills. I promise if the left ever flirts with an anti-American dictator candidate, I'll return the favor. Agreed. When you watch the news, it doesn't sound like he's lost a single voter after all of the crazy shit that he did. I'm glad that some conservative right-leaning folks have realized that he has crossed way too many lines to be given power again. Not me, but my aunt. She was MAGA all the way until the pandemic. She is a retired nurse and thinks Trump did a horrible job with COVID, causing many deaths. The most pathetic thing is, Trump didn't have to do anything. He could have just let the experts do their thing and he would have gotten all the political credit. I was more anti-Hillary than pro-Trump, but the whole drain the swamp thing resonated, as I think Washington needs massive turnover, still do. But that R was so divisive and really can't put a whole sentence together without being a jerk to some group or another, it turned my stomach. And then there's the whole COVID fiasco. Now literally everything out of his mouth is just so fucking out there. The rest of the world thinks we're all stupid. I shudder to think he even has a chance of holding that office again. Drain the swamp was one of the phrases generated selected by Cambridge Analytica for Trump to use. https://www.youtube.com/watch?pbeoxzffq#3m22 to influence people. They were part of a group using macro-targeted psychological warfare techniques to influence politics. Wiki on SCL Cambridge Analytica, https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/scl_group. Deep state and build the wall were also phrases selected by them. My mother was strong right-wing all her life. Now she is leaning left, surprisingly shifted after they sold Thar Company and now to rely on government pension because they did not have any other retirement plans. Yeah, my dad was all for Trump until he realized his tax bill completely fucked the family over. My mom voted Trump the first time. She hated the Clintons and is a Republican military spouse. She became extremely anti-Trump after the 6th of January. She was losing faith in him leading up to that point, but that was definitely the biggest breaking point. She now argues with her friends who still support him. As far as I know, my parents actually liked Clinton, weren't big fans of Bush, and then something happened. Something after Bush left office and before Trump was elected. Not quite sure what it was, seems like it could have been sort of historical. But it was something. Eater, S, Death, Obama. Either way, they really became Trump fans. Now they live in a newish city with few friends, or friends that only confirm their worldview. And I'm the outcast snowflake son who lives in the big scary city. Really hope one day they come back from the brink, but if 1/6 didn't convince them, what will? Evidence of his lack of control, he keeps defaming Carol even though he's been found guilty before, a person with no control over himself and what he says and does should not be in the presidency. Irony is any sane person would have settled that case out of court and all he would have to do is tfu and the Carol story would have disappeared. He can't make good decisions to literally save his financial life just like he made and would make terrible decisions as president. Guy just has bad judgment regardless of anything else. I voted for Trump for the 2016 election. I had just turned 18 that year. It was my first election. I didn't watch or read or research anything about politics. Why would I? I was just a teenager living the fun life. All I did was listen to what my family said. They complained about how the Democrats were ruining everything and how the Obama healthcare plan was horrible and migrants were awful and so on. My dad said it was time for a change and America needed to be run like a business, by a businessman, with the Americans as the shareholders. I assumed my family knew what was best because they sounded like they knew what they were talking about, and I listened to their advice. Seemed logical at the time. After watching everything that happened and actually learning about politics, I realized I had just been naive. I severely regret my decision and won't vote uninformed again. Don't skip midterms either. Ukraine. As a veteran who rode submarines and spent 60% of my career patrolling off unnamed coastal waters, to see Russia as anything but a threat is to be naive. It's okay to take a business approach on the economy, but to show weakness on the political front is unforgivable. What no one can get their head around is how profoundly ignorant the man is of just about everything. Neither Bill Clinton nor Obama served, but they were students of history. They knew what had happened and what the stakes were. GWB was a pretty ignorant guy too, but he surrounded himself with old pros who knew their business, even if it was misguided like Iraq, and didn't run off the rails. Trump knows no history, he knows virtually nothing. He's simply a con man whose sole talent is spewing random garbage till he gets a reaction, and then doubles down on that. My boomer dad and his friends voted blue the last 2 election cycles because of the 6th of January and the crazy Republican obstruction in Congress. They will vote blue again this coming election. My dad is a die-hard Republican. Even served on the Reagan admin. But the current group of Republicans are just too crazy even for him. Edit. To be fair, he's still a racist twat. He's in the medical field, so not anti-vaccine or homophobic, but he still has most of the disgusting Republican beliefs. It won't take much to get him voting red again. Just dump Trump. My boomer, military vet dad refuses to vote for Trump. Not because he's racist, sexist, all around a bigot, which is funny, as his half Filipina daughter that was SAR for years. This wasn't the tipping point for him. No. It was because of J6 and he feels like the US is now a sitcom every other country watches with popcorn. Only reason. I was never a Trump supporter or even knew much about politics. I grew up as a white person in the deep south and everyone always talked shit about how bad Democrats were, so I thought I was a Republican. I never voted or thought it mattered. Then Donald Trump was elected to president and I was stunned. I didn't know anything about his party or Hillary's, but I was just shocked people elected a businessman con man. I started to care and read more because I am in my late 30s at this point. The more I read, the more I realized I didn't support anything Republicans supported, and I'm not a racist. Since then I have done more to educate myself on what happens in our government, registered and voted, and have pushed my wife to get more involved. I've always been Republican. In the first election I felt like I was voting for the lesser of two evils. But then during his time in office he constantly made me regret my decision, so I didn't vote for him again. I'm not a Clinton defender, she's not perfect by any means, but I know we would still have Roe if she had won. When I think of women bleeding out in hospital parking lots because doctors aren't allowed to treat them, I just know we wouldn't be here if Hillary had won. And I know that COVID would have been less horrid with a competent adult leading us instead of a dumb child. J6 was the culmination after watching him implode over 4 years. I was more anti-left than pro-Trump really. Almost voted for him but didn't. Russia placed bounties on us troops in Afghanistan and led an assault on us forces in Syria. I honestly thought Trump was going to go ham, but he just about sucked Putin's cock at every opportunity. For all the shit that Trump talks, I couldn't find a single fucking thing he's ever said about Putin in a negative way. You can find all sorts of fanboying of Trump to Putin, however. That kind of got me noticing, and the years ahead, his words and actions basically confirms it. He supports Russian interests above his own, which is pretty fucking telling for a guy like that. He has not said a word about Navalny's death. Tells me everything about him. Turns out I was just brainwashed by my family. My whole perspective on politics and life in general changed when I moved out at 18. Looking back, I was raised to always hate everything that didn't align with Republican beliefs. When reality hit me, I realized I was opposed and wanted to change that. My family still worships him. I, however, finally realized that he's nothing more than Putin's crusty old ballsack.